Welcome back. This is our preview for Merchants of the Dark Road from Elf Creek Games. This is a dice placement game, as you might know, because we already did a first look on this. Now in that, we took a look at this game from about 30,000 feet, but today we're going to be digging down a little deeper, taking a look at all of the locations on the board, as well as looking at that player turn in a little bit more detail as well. As you can see, I have the board laid out right here in front of me, and on top of the board, which is not where it's supposed to go, I have one of the player boards because I want to talk a little bit more how the player turn works. As you may recall, you're going to be using dice from your standard pool to push these other dice up through the action pool and these 3 action spaces. Now there's a lot more that this player board does, and you can look at our first look to learn a little bit more about that, but I want to talk about these 3 spaces in particular. On any given player's turn, they're going to take one of these dice and push it up into one of these other 3 dice that are into these locked spaces. Depending on which one they push, it's going to move up through one of these 3 spaces and into this position. Now, before this dice is placed out onto the main board to take an action, you're immediately going to take one of these 3 actions, and I'll explain those right now. This one right here, this is the crafting action. When you do this, you're simply going to look at the pip value of the dice that you pushed up, according to this chart right here, and craft an item. Now when you craft an item in this game, you're going to be taking it from the item pool and you have to puzzle it onto the back of your cart. So, like Tetris, you're going to be placing these on the back of your cart kind of in a Tetris sort of fashion. Now keep in mind, as you do this, you're able to rearrange them as you see fit so that you can make the most of your cart. This second space is going to do one of 2 different things. You can either take a lantern. Lanterns are going to go right here on your cart. You can hold up to 4, and those are going to be used for various things throughout the game, so you're going to want to stockpile some of those to some degree. If you don't take a lantern, this allows you to bring up your illuminated die, and this is a very unique and interesting part of the game. So, if I'd moved the 2 die up through this space and took the illuminated die, I'm going to take this die right here and bring it up here as well. The big thing about the illuminated die is it's going to open up more options on the main board, but maybe even bigger than that is you're going to be able to effectively take 2 or maybe even 3 actions on your turn. And finally, if I'd moved this 3rd die up through this 3rd position, I also am going to have one of 2 options. First, you can simply take 2 coin. And as I mentioned before in the first look, coin is a potential scoring in this game because at the end of the game, you're going to look at your coin, you're going to look at your prestige, and the lower of those 2 things is going to be your final score. If you don't take the 2 coin here, you're able to move the market wheel. The market wheel is where you're going to mainly be picking up a lot of the items to put on your cart. There's a lot of ways you can manipulate the market wheel, but I'm going to have Ryan help me out in explaining that once we get to the different locations on the board. And speaking of the main board, before we get to all those locations, let's talk about what a player is going to do and how they interact with it. If I'd pushed this 3 up off my player board, the first thing I'm going to do is move around this rondelle in the middle of the board 3 spaces. You go to each of these nodes, so I would go 1, 2, 3, landing right here. Now, depending on the node that you land on, you can interact with the 2 districts beside it. And potentially, if you used an illuminated die as well, you're able to interact with this building. And you can interact with those buildings only if you use the illuminated die. So, for example, if I did move to this location and used these 2 spaces with an illuminated die, after my turn was over and I took all of the actions, I would remove the illuminated die off the board and into the general supply, while my standard die would come back beside my player board. So with all of that said, let's dive into all of these locations. I'm going to have Ryan start off with the Great Bazaar.
Yes, the Great Bazaar. This is a location you are going to be traveling to a lot in this game because you want to collect goods, and this is the primary way to do that. Now, this bazaar kind of acts as a market where you can go to purchase goods, and these goods are going to be rolled randomly. So not everything is going to be available at the same time. Now you'll notice that this is a wheel that actually is able to spin, and as it spins, it adjusts the prices of each category of good. You'll see the prices listed along the outside. When you come to the Great Bazaar, you can only buy something that's featured here. However, you have a few options that you can carry out in any order. First, you're able to buy goods. You can pay the printed cost, you can take that die and purchase that good. For example, if I purchase a staff, I go to the pile of items, pull out a common staff and place it on my player board like David showed. Now, in any order, like I said, I can decide to spin this 1 space, thus changing the prices of the goods. I can do this before or after I purchase. Maybe I want to make something more expensive for other players. Lastly, you have the option to change the facing of one die. Maybe I don't want a potion, but I do want a book. I can actually take this potion, turn it into a book before I purchase it. Now, once you're done buying items, you're going to have all of the dice that you used sitting out in front of you. After you've collected your items and you're done with your market turn at the Great Bazaar, you're going to roll all of those dice that you just purchased, and you're going to place them back on the board. Now, there is one caveat to this. There can never be more than 2 of the same items available for sale. Now, after you've visited the Great Bazaar, you can use your items for 2 things. One is to give them to heroes, to equip those heroes, which is something David will talk about. But the other is to save them up for the Queen's commissions. Now, you'll see here a number of different tiles that feature 3 items apiece and a location. The goal of collecting one of these tiles is to then later move to that location and deliver these items. And you're going to get points based on how many of these 3 items you deliver. Now, some of the heroes that you can recruit want to go to specific locations as well. So you can actually create some synergies by taking commission tiles and heroes that want to go to the same location. Now, you don't want to venture down the dark road too much because there are risks. So the more commissions you can turn in at once, the better for you.
Now, as you know, to fill those Queen's commissions, you can go to the Great Bazaar, you can even craft some of those goods on your wagon. But you can also go to the dark market. The dark market is located down here at the bottom of the board, and this is going to work in a very basic way. When you go to the dark market, you're going to move a piece around this little circle right here, and depending on how far you move it, you're going to be able to take the goods depicted. Now, you're going to have to spend 1 coin to move at least 1 space when you do this, but you can spend additional coins to move around that circle all the way to where you started if you really wanted those goods. Also note at the bottom of the circle, when you go to that location, you can either interact with the Queen's commissions again and take one of those commissions, one of the top ones off of the piles, or you can go to the center area and pick up a crown card. The crown cards are effectively end-of-game scoring cards. You're going to have 2 face-up and then a deck right here. When you take one of these, you can take one of the face-up cards or off the top of the deck. However, if you take one of the face-up cards, there's also some bonus rewards that you get as well. And just like the money, those cards are going to remain hidden from the other players, so at the end of the game, you might be able to surprise some of the other players at the table with what your score may or may not be. And the next district over is the Ringway Inn. This is also adjacent to this node, and this is where you're going to interact with the heroes. The heroes are going to play a number of different roles, but effectively you're going to give them some basic goods so you can add them to your wagon. They'll give you some money, and then hopefully you can transport them to various cities to score some prestige. As we take a look at one of these heroes, there's a few things on this. You're going to see at the very bottom the location that they want to travel to. So when you do travel, and we'll get to that in a second, you're going to want to take this hero to that location. Along the left-hand side of the card here at the top are the various goods that they will accept in trade. You don't have to give them all those goods, but you have to have at least one of those goods to give them. Noting that if you give them an upgraded good, something we haven't gotten to yet, they'll actually give you a little bit more money. If you give them at least one of those goods, they're going to add to your wagon. Now, you're not just transporting them over to those cities, you're also going to benefit from some of these because this bottom icon here is going to do one of a number of different things. This one, for instance, lets you carry more on your wagon. That grid, you can ignore that to some degree because you can put at least one good on this hero card and transport it. So it's effectively going to increase the size of your wagon as it relates to goods and make this hero a little bit more valuable. And as I mentioned earlier, there's these buildings down these roads. These do a number of different things that are going to enhance your game and hopefully make you a little bit more efficient at what you're trying to do. But as you travel all the way around this rondel to this last location that we haven't talked about, Jurg's Excursions, this is where you're going to travel or potentially visit the ruins. Ryan's going to take care of that.
Yes, Jurg's Excursions, your last stop before the dark road. Now this is the location you're going to have to go to if you want to travel the board, but you have 2 options when you're leaving this area. Now you can either visit the ruins of Yin to get some rewards, or you can actually form a caravan and travel the dark road in order to score some victory points. Now if you do visit the ruins, you're going to be looking at just this top portion of the board here, which is going to give you some boxes full of rewards. Now you're going to get to move around those boxes a number of times equal to the number of heroes you have. So the more heroes you bring in, the more you're going to get to move around. And this is going to give you different bonuses, including items that you can add directly to your player board. In addition, you're going to see the ruins die, which you can roll here by spending a lantern. And this is going to give you some additional bonuses. In fact, you can actually roll for an illuminated die by rolling the correct symbol twice in a row here. So it's kind of a gamble, but you can get that. Now, if you don't want to do that, your other option is to travel. You're going to be declaring yourself the leader of a caravan that's going to move down this road. Now, other players are able to join you on this, but first you have to set your destination. You'll notice on the travel board that we're split up into 3 different districts, each with 2 locations. These locations are important because you remember some of the commissions and some of the heroes you have want to go to specific locations. Now, you are just deciding which city you want to go to. Everyone else that comes along can go to the other city in that same region if they wish. For example, if I come here, someone else can move down here instead. Now, you're going to declare your location before other players decide if they want to join. In addition, you have to decide if you're going to stay on the dark road or if you're going to take a shortcut. Shortcuts are very risky, but they can offer more rewards. Once you've determined those things and determined who else is going to be traveling with you, you're going to choose a companion. Now, as the leader of the caravan, you're going to be able to choose one of these companions to put in your play area. These companions have special abilities that can be triggered with crystals once per game. So you'll see each one of these companions has 2 unique abilities. You're going to set that companion in front of you, and then you're going to be ready to actually do your travel action. Now, based on whether you chose to take the dark road or the shortcut, you're going to draw an encounter card from the top of the deck. Now, each one of these is going to have a number of symbols at the bottom that shows what happens with each different die you can draft. I mentioned earlier that you're building a pool of dice based on the number of players. Now you're going to roll those, and you're going to take turns drafting these dice. Now, if you chose to stay on the dark road, you as the leader get to choose the first die. You're going to take the number, you're going to reference on that card, and you're going to take whatever reward is given to you. Now, if you took the shortcut, the risky move, you actually choose your die last. The player to your left gets to choose their die first, and you're stuck with whatever they leave you. However, going down a shortcut can give you a lot of good rewards, so it might be worth making that risk. Now, once you've gone through your card, you can now actually do your delivery. Based on which location you travel to, you can turn in any number of commissions or heroes that need to be in that location. However, you have to turn in goods along with those commissions. I mentioned earlier that each commission has 3 goods to turn in. If you turn in at least 1, you're going to score some points. If you turn in all 3, you're going to score more points. And if you turn in upgraded goods, you're going to score even more additional points. So this is really where you're going to cash in all the hard work that you've been working on over the course of the game. Now, when you turn in a hero, they're leaving your party to go to this location. You're going to score points, but then you're effectively losing that hero for the rest of the game. You'll have to travel back around the board and pick up new heroes. So traveling is a great way to score points, but you don't have to be the one to activate it. You can wait for another player to travel and join their caravan instead.
So as you can see, traveling is key to actually getting some of that prestige. You can't really get much prestige on one side of the board, but you have to do this traveling to get over there and get that prestige so that you can balance your coin and your prestige, because the lower of the 2 of those is going to be your final score at the end of the game. And this game is all about that balance between working that rondel with your dice, getting that dice placement and timing it just right, moving up the right dice at the right time so that you can eventually gather all the heroes and the commissions you need and hopefully efficiently get them over to those cities to deliver. And that's really what Merchants of the Dark Road is all about. If you have any questions at all or think we missed some details, make some comments down below. We'll try to answer them, or we'll get some of the people from Elf Creek to answer them. Until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you then. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.